Did she just spill her drink? How embarrassing. Poor Richard.
The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, and every head in the ballroom turned to stare at the black woman in the plain dress standing next to Richard Blackwell, the richest man in New York City. Did she just spill her drink? Someone whispered loud enough for half the room to hear. How embarrassing. Poor Richard. But Florence didn't pick up the glass. She didn't apologize. She just smiled because she knew something they didn't. Something that would change everything in exactly 14 minutes. 3 months earlier, Richard Blackwell had done the unthinkable. He married a woman no one had ever heard of. No social media presence, no family connections, no designer clothes. Just Florence, a quiet woman who worked at a bookstore in Brooklyn and wore the same black flats every single day. The news exploded across every gossip site and business magazine. How could a billionaire marry someone so ordinary? If you're watching this story unfold and want to see where it goes, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like and comment where you're watching from, because this story gets wild. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The wedding had been small, too small for someone of Richard's status. His mother hadn't come. His business partners sent gifts but made excuses. And the media had a field day, calling Florence everything from a gold digger to a charity case. One headline read, "Billionaire's midlife crisis, Richard Blackwell marries nobody." But Richard didn't care what they said. He had fallen in love with Florence the moment she corrected his French pronunciation in her bookstore. He had walked in looking for a rare book, and she had handed it to him while speaking perfect French, then perfect Italian, then flawless German. He had never met anyone like her. "Why do you work here?" he had asked that first day. "Because I like books," she said simply, "and I like people who read them." He came back every week, then every day, and eventually he asked her to dinner. She said yes, but only if he promised not to talk about money. He agreed. And for the first time in his life, Richard Blackwell had a conversation that didn't revolve around stocks, deals, or power. They talked about poetry, about history, about the small moments that make life worth living. 6 months later, he proposed. She said yes, and the world lost its mind. Now, 3 months into their marriage, Florence stood in the Grand Imperial Ballroom for the annual Blackwell Foundation Gala. It was the biggest event of the year. Politicians, celebrities, old money families, everyone who mattered was there, and they were all staring at her. "Is that what she's wearing?" A woman in diamonds whispered to her friend. "I wouldn't be caught dead in that." Florence's dress was simple, black, elegant, but not flashy. No jewelry except her wedding ring. She looked beautiful, but she didn't look like she belonged. At least that's what they thought. Richard squeezed her hand. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Florence said, but her heart was pounding. She had known this night would be hard. Richard had warned her. His world was cruel. His people were sharks. But she had agreed to come anyway, because she loved him, and because she had a plan. The evening started with cocktails. Florence stood next to Richard as person after person came to greet him. They shook his hand, they kissed his cheek, and they looked at Florence like she was a stain on his expensive suit. Richard, darling, a tall woman with red lips and cold eyes, purred. Her name was Victoria Lane, old money, older attitude. "I didn't know you were bringing a guest." "This is my wife, Florence," Richard said firmly. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, of course, how lovely." She looked Florence up and down. "You must be so proud, dear, landing a man like Richard. It's like winning the lottery, isn't it?" Florence smiled politely. "Something like that." Victoria laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. "Well, enjoy it while it lasts." She walked away, her heels clicking on the marble like gunshots. Richard's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," Florence said. "I expected this." But it got worse. At dinner, Florence was seated at the main table, right next to Richard. Across from them sat Gregory Hamilton, a real estate tycoon, and his wife, Barbara. Next to them was Senator Paul Davis and his assistant. All power, all money, all judgment. "So, Florence," Barbara said, dabbing her lips with a napkin, "what do you do?" "I work at a bookstore," Florence said. Barbara blinked. "Oh, how quaint." "It's honest work," Florence said. "Of course it is," Barbara said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I just meant, well, it must be quite an adjustment. Going from that to all of this." She waved her hand at the ballroom, at the chandeliers, at the wealth dripping from every corner. "It's different," Florence admitted. "I'm sure it is," Gregory said, leaning forward. "But tell me, Florence, what exactly did you bring to this marriage? I mean, Richard is a billionaire. He could have anyone. So what made you so special?" The table went quiet. Even the senator looked uncomfortable. Richard's face turned red. "Gregory, that's enough," Richard said, his voice low and dangerous. But Florence put her hand on his arm. "It's okay." She looked at Gregory, her eyes steady. "I brought myself. That was enough for him." Gregory smirked. "How romantic." Barbara laughed. "Well, I suppose love is blind, as they say." The table erupted in polite laughter. Florence felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't look away. She just smiled and took a sip of water, because she knew. She knew what was coming. Make sure you're subscribed, because this story's about to flip in a way you won't see coming. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your location. Let's see where everyone's watching from. After dinner, the speeches began. Richard stood at the podium and talked about the foundation's work, about education, about giving back, about building a better world. And then he said something that made Florence's heart skip. "This year we're launching a new initiative, a global literacy program that will bring books and education to children in 12 different countries. And I'm proud to say that this program was designed by someone very special, someone who understands the power of words better than anyone I've ever met. My wife, Florence." The room went silent, then polite applause. But Florence could hear the whispers. "She designed it? Really? What does she know about running a program? This is embarrassing." Richard smiled at her from the podium. "Florence, would you like to say a few words?" Florence's stomach dropped. This wasn't part of the plan. But she stood up anyway. She walked to the podium, her legs shaking. Every eye in the room was on her, judging her, waiting for her to fail. She reached the microphone, took a breath, and then she spoke. "Thank you, Richard." Her voice was soft but clear. "I know many of you are surprised to see me here. I know I don't look like I belong. I'm not from your world. I didn't grow up with money or connections or fancy schools. I grew up in a small apartment with my mother, who worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. She couldn't afford to send me to college. But she taught me something more valuable. She taught me that knowledge is free if you're willing to work for it." The room was silent now, really silent. "I spent my childhood in libraries," Florence continued. "I taught myself French from old textbooks, Italian from cooking shows, German from online courses, Spanish from neighbors, Mandarin from YouTube videos. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted to understand the world. I wanted to connect with people. I wanted to learn." She paused, looked around the room, saw the confusion on their faces. "And that's what this program is about, giving kids like me a chance. Kids who don't have money or connections, kids who just need a book and a dream." The applause was louder this time, but Florence wasn't done. "I know some of you think I married Richard for his money, that I'm some kind of gold digger. And honestly, I don't care what you think, because I know the truth. I know who I am, and I know what I bring to this marriage. Not money, not status, but love, respect, and a partnership built on something real." She stepped away from the microphone. The room erupted in applause. Not polite applause, real applause. And as she walked back to her seat, she saw the shock on their faces, the shame, the realization that they had underestimated her. But the night wasn't over. After the speeches, the gala moved into the networking hour. This was where the real business happened. Deals were made, alliances were formed, and reputations were destroyed. Victoria Lane cornered Florence near the champagne table. "That was quite a speech," she said. her voice like ice. Very inspiring. But let's be honest, dear. You can give all the speeches you want. You'll never be one of us. Florence smiled. You're right. I'll never be like you. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. I said you're right. I'll never be like you. I'll never look down on people just because they have less money. I'll never treat someone like garbage just because they didn't grow up in a mansion. And I'll never forget where I came from. Victoria's face turned red. How dare you? But before she could finish, a voice interrupted them. A voice speaking rapid French. Excusez-moi, Madame Lane. Je cherche Monsieur Blackwell. Savez-vous où il est? It was the French ambassador. He had been trying to get Victoria's attention all night, and she had been too busy gossiping to notice. Now he stood in front of them, looking frustrated. Victoria stared at him blankly. I don't... The ambassador sighed and turned to Florence. Parlez-vous français? Florence smiled. Oui, bien sûr. Monsieur Blackwell est là-bas, près de la fenêtre. Je peux vous y emmener si vous voulez. The ambassador's face lit up. Ah, merci beaucoup. Vous êtes très gentil. Florence led him across the room, leaving Victoria standing there with her mouth open. And that was just the beginning. Over the next hour, Florence spoke Italian with the Italian trade minister, Spanish with the Spanish consul, German with a group of European investors, and Mandarin with a Chinese tech CEO. Every single time the room got quieter, people stopped talking and started watching, because they couldn't believe what they were seeing. This woman, this poor, nobody woman from Brooklyn. She was speaking 5 languages, fluently, like it was nothing. You better be subscribed by now because we're about to hit the twist that changes everything. Drop a like, leave a comment with where you're from, and let's keep this going. Gregory Hamilton approached Richard, his face pale. Richard, I had no idea. Your wife is remarkable. Richard smiled. I know. Why didn't you tell anyone? Why did you let them treat her like that? Richard's smile faded. Because I wanted to see who my real friends were. I wanted to see who would be kind to her, even when they thought she was nobody. And now I know. Gregory looked sick. Richard, I apologize. I was out of line at dinner. You weren't just out of line, Richard said coldly. You were cruel. And I don't forget cruelty. Gregory's business deal with Blackwell Industries, worth $50 million, was canceled the next day. Barbara Hamilton tried to apologize to Florence. I'm so sorry, dear. I didn't know. If I had known you were so educated, so accomplished, I would never have... Florence cut her off. If you had known? So you only treat people with respect if they're educated or accomplished? What about kindness just because we're all human? Barbara had no answer. By the end of the night, the entire ballroom knew the truth. Florence wasn't some poor girl who got lucky. She was brilliant, self-taught, resilient. She had built herself from nothing, while most of them had inherited everything. And the whispers changed. Did you hear her speak Mandarin? It was flawless. I heard she taught herself 5 languages. Richard didn't marry down, he married up. As the gala ended, Florence and Richard stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below them like stars. You were incredible tonight, Richard said, pulling her close. I was just being myself, Florence said. I know. That's why you were incredible. She looked up at him. Did you really cancel Gregory's deal? I did. And I'll cancel every deal with every person who disrespected you. They need to learn that you're not just my wife, you're my partner, my equal. And if they can't see that, they don't deserve to do business with me. Florence smiled. You know they'll call you crazy. Let them, Richard said. I'd rather be crazy and happy than miserable and rich. They stood there in silence, holding each other as the city hummed below. And Florence realized something. She had spent her whole life being underestimated, being overlooked, being told she wasn't enough. But tonight, she had proven them all wrong. Not by changing who she was, but by being exactly who she had always been. The next morning, the news exploded. Every gossip site, every business magazine, every social media platform was talking about Florence Blackwell, the billionaire's wife who spoke 5 languages, the woman who had humiliated New York's elite without raising her voice. One headline read, "The Quiet Power of Florence Blackwell: How a Bookstore Worker Became the Most Talked About Woman in New York." Another said, "Richard Blackwell's Secret Weapon: Meet the Genius Behind His New Global Initiative." And Florence's favorite, "Underestimated, Florence Blackwell proves that class has nothing to do with money." But the best part came 3 days later. Florence received a letter. It was from a young girl in Brooklyn. Her name was Lisa, and she was 12 years old. The letter said, "Dear Mrs. Blackwell, I saw you on the news. I saw how those rich people treated you, and I saw how you didn't let them break you. I'm like you. I'm poor. I live in a tiny apartment with my mom, and people at school make fun of me because I don't have nice clothes. But after seeing you, I realized something. It doesn't matter what they think. I'm going to learn. I'm going to work hard. And one day I'm going to prove them all wrong, just like you did. Thank you for showing me that it's possible. Love, Lisa." Florence cried when she read it, and she wrote back immediately. "Dear Lisa, you don't need to prove anyone wrong. You just need to prove yourself right. Keep learning, keep growing, keep being kind. And one day you'll look back and realize that the people who made fun of you don't matter, because you were always enough, just as you are. And if you ever need a book, come visit me at the store. I'll make sure you get one. Love, Florence." 6 months later, Florence launched the Global Literacy Program. It brought books to over 2 million children in 12 countries. And every single book had a dedication inside. For the dreamers, for the learners, for the ones who refuse to be small. Keep growing. Richard's mother finally reached out. She called Florence and apologized for missing the wedding. "I was wrong about you," she said. "I thought you weren't good enough for my son. But the truth is, he's the lucky one." Florence forgave her, because holding on to anger only hurts the person carrying it. Victoria Lane lost her position on the board of 3 different charities after her behavior at the gala went viral. She tried to apologize to Florence, but Florence never responded. Some people don't deserve your energy. And Gregory Hamilton? He lost more than a business deal. He lost his reputation, because word spread that he had insulted Florence Blackwell. And in New York, that was a career-ending mistake. But Florence didn't celebrate their downfall. She didn't gloat or brag. She just kept working, kept building, kept helping kids like Lisa, who needed someone to believe in them. 1 year after the gala, Richard and Florence sat in their library at home. It was their favorite room. Floor-to-ceiling books, a fireplace, 2 armchairs facing each other. They spent every evening there, reading and talking. "Do you ever regret it?" Richard asked. "Marrying me? Dealing with all of this?" Florence looked up from her book. "Not for a second. Even after everything they put you through?" "Especially after that," Florence said, "because they taught me something important. They taught me that my worth isn't determined by their opinions. It's determined by me, by my choices, by the way I treat people. And I like who I am." Richard smiled. "I love who you are." "I know," Florence said. "That's why we work." And they went back to their books, side by side, 2 people from different worlds who had built a new one together. Because at the end of the day, love isn't about money or status or what other people think. It's about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses you anyway. Florence had been underestimated her entire life, but she never underestimated herself. And that made all the difference. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button one more time. Leave a like and comment where you're watching from, because stories like this remind us that we're all capable of more than the world expects. You don't need permission to be great, you just need courage. And Florence had that in abundance. The world will always try to put you in a box, to tell you who you are and who you can be. But you get to decide. You get to write your own story. And if they laugh at you along the way, let them. Because one day they'll realize they underestimated the wrong person. Florence Blackwell started as a girl in Brooklyn who loved books, and she became a woman who changed the world, not by becoming someone else, but by refusing to be anything less than herself. And that's the most powerful thing any of us can do. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.